Welcome to the Say Less podcast. Man, I have a wonderful guest. We're talking education, y'all. She's been an administrator. Well, she's been in education for 16 years. She's been principal for 8. She's been administrator for 8, as well as teaching. We're going to talk about some family dynamics, what we call healthy respect for our children. Proud to introduce Miss Jamilla Thomas.
Welcome. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
Also a classmate on 89.
Pioneers, go West.
Yeah. So you've done some fantastic work, man. I mean, since leaving Wichita, man. And I've always had a solid respect for you, class president, and so on and so forth. I ain't forgot. You know, that's I've always admired your ability, to do the things that you've done. Really respect everything you've done. I forgot to mention, all due respect, she's an author too, y'all.
Yes.
Go to make sure she announced her book. So
Yes.
yeah, so
Absolutely.
So I am really proud of you. It was important for me to do this interview with you, because the work you've done. And we're just gonna get right into it. I mean, family dynamics. We want to really help. For me, it's important for me to do educational things for family. I'm going into a father series, and I want to really explain, from a woman's perspective, especially from the educational system, what can we do better for our children? As far as, when they're going to school, I'm looking at some things that we were raised with.
Yes.
And I feel the dynamics are much different than when we came up. I mean, we came up from, we would get a paddle in school too.
Yes.
Our kids is, actually just,
Right.
abusive to teachers.
Yes.
Parents are supporting that.
Yes.
I understand loving your kid, but, how do we make these things better? How can we focus on our children better to be ready for life better?
I wanted to just thank you for having me here. It's such an honor.
Yes.
And please know the respect and admiration is mutual.
Yes.
Most definitely. And so, I have always had a love of education, even when we were in high school.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's why during that time I was into student government and president, class president and whatnot. But if you remember, Les, back when we were in school, do you remember when we started the Brotherhood program?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. I remember us doing that.
Yes.
That was a very unique situation. Yeah.
Yes, it was. And so I remember my first thought in educating. Even then, I think that's when I first learned myself about my love for education and my love for people. And I remember I thought we needed something that would bring us all a little bit closer together so we could grow together and be the best that we could. And so with that, I remember going and asking the sponsor if he would sponsor us to do the Brotherhood program.
I remember that.
You remember that? And we took a trip to K-State.
Yes.
Education.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. But that was an honor because it was an opportunity for us to all begin to grow. And so I thank God that my love of education just continued. I was blessed to be part of the Grow Your Own Teacher program, Wichita State University. And that took me right into education. And so in working in education, I started to get that close-up personal feel with parents, with life. And it was an eye-opener to, I thought I knew that folks came from a lot of different backgrounds and that we all come from a lot of different backgrounds. But when I stepped into that classroom after becoming a teacher, right, the identification of all of us and the different backgrounds we come from became very powerful and very significant. And it became a teacher for me that this is really a lot bigger than us. And being mindful of the dynamics that we participate in on a daily basis has a powerful impact on our kids, short term and long term.
Absolutely.
And then as a result, those results then in turn have a long-term effect on our legacies and how our next set of generations function. And so as a teacher, the first thing that I learned, and I'm grateful for, is that children learn very differently. And children are very much a mirror of us,
Yes.
and what we do. I had a preacher a long time ago make a phrase. He said, children are excellent imitators, horrible interpreters. And they are. They really are. And so they will mimic what we do.
Absolutely.
And if you all remember when we were growing up, our parents would tell us, you do what I tell you to do.
Exactly.
You do what I tell you to do. And we did it. Right? We were a different generation too. So we did it because we knew the consequences. Spanking was different. Discipline was different.
Absolutely.
And we couldn't even consider the thought of calling 911.
Exactly.
If we were going to get a whipping or anything like that, that was out. Because I think we feared our parents more than we did the policemen, right? But it was a healthy respect in some ways as well. And so, as we see in life, anything that's too far to the left, too far to the right, it becomes unhealthy. And I began to see those dynamics play out more and more in the classroom. Sometimes I saw it play out with my teachers. I saw it play out all the time with my parents. And so going back to what I was mentioning a minute ago about it being a mirror, a lot of times my teachers would ask me, I'm having trouble with this kid. This kid is doing this and this kid is doing this. And they would be frustrated. And they would go, I don't know why. And they didn't. But then I said, well, let's wait and visit and have a parent-teacher conference. You know, we can get an understanding of maybe what's going on. And quite often,
You can see it.
yes,
You
our
see
students
why.
mirrored what their parents were doing because it was an imitation. So the imprinting impact is very important and it's very powerful from the mother's standpoint and from the father's standpoint. And so there's great power in seeing that correlation of how those students function, how it plays out in their academics,
Yes.
how it plays out in their social responses to their peers, and what it looks like when they begin to graduate, right? Where are they in that process? How well do they score on ACT tests and all the above? It goes into that because it goes into their self-confidence, knowing how to resolve conflict, resolution of conflict with others. And so as we continue through the process of education, I begin to realize that as we keep discipline in place, help to teach parents how to discipline, and to know it's not a problem to be what they sometimes call a little old-fashioned. Being a little old-fashioned is still good in its right respect.
You know, that's interesting you say that. Like, that sense of old-fashioned is kind of like a thing that, you know, people kind of look down upon now.
Yes.
It's like this new school versus this old school.
Yeah.
I wonder if we've lost the sense or the ability to really reach our children with the me type of feel. You know, this is my child. Don't talk to my child like that.
Right.
Where it was such a sense when we were growing up with my parents and grandparents and so on and so forth. Of, hey, you respect my name. You respect who I am. This is how you act in front of those people. I don't care what they say to you. This is how you act.
Yes.
I feel like we've lost that, and I think that's a thing of the past. But I also think that it's always looked down upon now, and we're wondering why. You know, not trying to have a community.
Yes.
How that affects those dynamics affects each and every kid, because I can be protecting my kid by going aggressive to a teacher and, you know, feeling like I'm protecting my kid, but then that other kid that's disrespectful right there, that's the kid you gotta worry about first. So what could happen if he's getting bullied, your child getting bullied or something like that? So if everybody has this me attitude.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying? So,
that's right. And I can appreciate that because protection is fine with proper perspective.
There you go.
It's a good thing because here again, when we look at that me perspective.
Yes.
It is becoming a hindrance throughout our society as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
But, Les, it is not old-fashioned.
Mm-hmm.
It is not old-fashioned to be willing to get on the same page.
Exactly.
It's that village mentality,
Yes.
right? And so it doesn't mean the village mentality has to function necessarily the way it did back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
but let's evolve. We can evolve that village mentality to still what we do today. Let me give you a perfect example, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
In working with my parents,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, I did have parents that were afraid to spank their children
Mm-hmm.
because of the law,
Wow.
that they really were.
Wow.
And so I think that has contributed to some of the evolving of, I'm not gonna go that route with my kids. I have honestly witnessed, and I've had parents tell me face to face, because of some of the trauma, their own trauma that they experienced at the hands of their parents. I've got whippings for things I wasn't supposed to get a whipping for.
Then that's it.
Right? Or I got on punishment for something,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
But we want to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? We've got to take that mentality of, ask the important questions. We can have accountability with empowerment.
Exactly.
We can have them both. And for our children, when you look at everything today, such as anxiety, panic attacks, depression, a self-complex of paranoia, right? All of that sometimes is transferred trauma that we give to our kids. Whereas if we go ahead and take back our power, right? Take back our power as parents in a healthy way and say, all right, we got an issue. We got a concern. But here's what we're going to do, because I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to be accountable. The mirror effect, right? I'm going to hold myself accountable, but I'm going to hold you accountable. But we're also going to have a conversation with the teacher in a respectful way, right?
It's paramount. It has to happen.
It's key.
Yeah.
And one thing I would always do is when my parents would come in, if we had an issue with a kid, this is an example I wanted to give you a minute ago. If we had an issue with a kid goes home, tell a parent, teacher did X, Y, and Z to me. Teacher comes to the school cussing my secretary out. Right? Okay, we're not having a conversation because I will not respond to you, my parent, disrespectfully. It starts with me modeling that, right? Same way with parents. They model it for their kids, so their kids come back and have a different response. So parent calms down, I have them write out whatever the problem is. So I don't miss what you're saying because it's important to me. We sit down and have a conversation without the student, right? Because it's keeping everything in proper protection, in proper perspective, right? All right. So now we're having an adult conversation to get an understanding. Not for me to be right, not for you to be right, but also the best thing that we can do as adults, village mentality, is get on the same page. And I would tell my parents, we're going to get on the same page. Before that child walks in here, they're going to understand that this is the discipline that needs to take place. Here's what maybe you could have done better. Here's maybe what we could have done better, right? But going forward, here's the game plan. And their part of it would be, what's going to be your ownership to contribute?
They want to know that off the back, right? They know to know that pretty quick.
And that's right. And for our new generation, right? That's that evolve piece, Les. As we evolved back in our day, we didn't give our input. You did what you were told, and that was it. But again, it's still clear that the adults are the adults. Where that may seem old-fashioned, that's just transparency and keeping everything in its proper perspective. And there's power in that. And when the children come in, or when the child comes in, doesn't matter what their age, from little school, middle school, high school, you can see a different respect trigger with the students, with all my kids. And when we would go through everything, the first thing that I would say to them, Les, would be, your parent is here, I am here. Why? Because we're about to get on the same page. There's not going to be a mystery. So now the child can't play you, they can't play me, they can't play themselves. Because we're all on the same page.
That's interesting.
And what we also make sure that they understood was your mama and your daddy and I and every principal, assistant principal in here and your teacher, we are on the same page for you.
Exactly.
We're on the same page for you. So now these are the expectations that we have for you, and everybody understands the expectation. Village mentality has evolved. It may not necessarily be in your neighborhood, because most neighbors don't talk to each other anymore.
Right. That's
right?
Exactly.
But in your inner community, we can take back the power to create powerful children that learn the respect of what needs to happen. Those children, Les, 90% of the time, we may have had that one problem with that kiddo, but we didn't have that same problem. It may have been something different, right? But we can even see a difference in how the children will respond as far as anxiety, ADHD, ADD. Not near as anxious, not near as nervous, because they have less transitions that they're dealing with as well. And so there's significant power in that. And there's also power in the mother and the father. When they come in there, it's interesting to see how they respond, how they conversate. Often my girls would imitate the way mom communicates. That's the same way that they would communicate, right?
Exactly.
If mom's talking fast and got a few choice words, baby girl is talking fast and she got a few choice words too.
Exactly.
But it eliminated me from being able to understand them. And I would have to say, you know what? Everything you're saying is important to me because it was. And so I would get mom and I on the same page. And we get that ladylike conversation going. And guess who's watching? That young lady, right?
And
then she's like, oh. And I understand I can hear you by just having a good conversation with me. But we got to take that power back for the sake of our kids.
How much of, that's interesting you said that, how much, because classmates, being your classmate, I've always known you to have, I've always known you were a leader. Back then, I could really actually see you were the person that would get everything, just like you said, the brotherhood thing.
Yeah.
That was just a group just formulated really quickly that was, hey, we need to know about college. We need to know about what's our next steps, you know what I mean, going to school. And you formulated that. Yeah. But you've always shown there's always been that love. How far do you go with your profession and using that to connect with the parents? Because I wanted to ask you this question. I know it's a tough one. I know this is going to be a tough one.
Let's go there. We got
mandated reporting.
Yes.
How much do you think that has really affected the educational system? Because, do you see what I'm saying?
Significant.
Because check this out. Before, you used to get that paddle, right?
Yes.
Nah, you get that paddle, you get that here, that intercom, your name was called. Everybody in class. Everybody in class knew that you was getting that paddle, right? You was gonna get that discipline. You had to come your butt right back there and sit down at that table and act like you had some sense.
That's right.
Well, now, since we got that mandated reporter, if the teacher is not necessarily with the same love and care, you see what I'm saying? And you don't know how to really be that parent because with the me thing, right?
Yes.
You dealing with a person that might be mandating something that they can't really see. Like, I know the difference between this parent and this parent that's really, really doing the right thing. Right. And that child just needs to be disciplined.
Yes.
Versus, you know what I mean? So we don't even touch it. So that's why I asked you about the mandated report. It scares me. I think that once that kind of got into the mix, it it really, really messed with things.
It did. You're right on the money with that. So with the mandating reporting piece, with parents, I had parents that did it all. some that did absolutely no discipline, right? The discipline was you're on punishment for 2 weeks, you don't get to watch TV for a week, you're in timeout, right? Okay, so we've got that spectrum. But then we had some that took it all the way to, there were times that I had to contact CPS, even myself, right? Which that's of course through an anonymous means once you do that. But here's the thing that we have to remember, and I think this is what we're missing, Les, is that with mandated reporting, you cannot allow that to be an excuse to not educate. It cannot be used for that, because when you have a parent that maybe has not learned how to discipline their child in a healthy way, they need to be taught those skills. That's when I would often get a counselor involved, right? Hey, let's go over, let's talk with my counselor. It may just be where there's ineffective communication that's extremely harsh. No physical contact, right? So we're not required mandating reporting for that. If it's something physical, I don't want my parent hurt, and I don't want my child hurt.
Exactly.
So again, it's how we do it, right? So am I reporting you because I'm mad at you and you just beat this child up, and now I know you're going to jail, kids going, going away from parent, and have we really helped the family? Or when we report it, are we talking to the caseworker to help ensure that the parent is getting the parenting skills that they need to become a better parent?
Is there a better way to litigate that, you think? I mean, that
approach.
Wow.
In all my experiences, it's been an approach.
Wow.
Because I can be a principal to call a caseworker, and I can light a fire to the case just by the way I deliver it.
Wow.
Right? I can take the legal approach, boom, 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 or I can take the approach of, I need you to help my family that's in crisis.
Wow.
And when it's handled that way, 9 times out of 10, bless, I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, families may have gone apart for a minute, but within a matter of weeks, they were back together, right? Parents learning new skills, new conversations. I can't tell you how many parents came back to my office. They may have been on 10 when we first met, but they came back later, and I've had parents cry in my arms, right? Thank God I'm retired from the school district. I've had parents ask me to pray with them.
Wow.
After hours of school, right? Well, they asked me, so I will. So when you ask what's the limit, my limit is I will not offend, but I will not deny care, right? And we gotta get back to the care part. Take care of the expectations. Take care of what's necessary for regulation. Make sure we follow the law, but make sure we're doing it with a great level of care. I have had children, let me tell you this, I don't mean to veer off, but I gotta tell you this.
No, absolutely.
When I tell you it cultivates the home in a special way, when we teach and we learn and we grow from each other, it's serious. I had 2 little girls come back to me one time, Les, after they got back with their mother. Amazing. Little girl was sitting on the stoop outside of my door, and asked my secretary, I said, well, why is she still sitting here? She's supposed to be going to class. And she said she's got to talk to you. Ms. Thomas, she's got to talk to you. I said, okay, give me just a minute. Went in, put my walkie-talkie, everything down. I called the baby in, and you got to make time. Right? Because love is an action word.
Yeah,
all right?
Absolutely.
So baby comes in. I said, what can I help you with, baby girl? What's going on? Right? She's like, Ms. Thomas. She said, I just had to come tell you thank you. I said, thank you for what, baby? She said, for taking care of us.
Wow.
I said, that's my job. She said, no, it's your heart.
Wow.
She said, thank you for taking care of our mama. I said, taking care of your mama? And I wasn't quite sure how to take that at first, right? I said, what do you mean by that? So you ask a question before you assume. She said, Ms. Thomas, she said, for the first time, And it almost puts me in tears.
Wow.
But she said, for the first time, my mother this weekend made us our first meal with her hands.
Wow.
I said, oh.
Wow.
Oh. And I said,
Deep.
well, she said, that's the first time, Miss Thomas.
Wow.
She said, I've never felt my mother's love like that. She said, we're becoming a family.
Wow.
I was like, whoa,
But
right?
It's
It's
I
deep,
know,
man.
I know it's deep. But
It's
you know,
deep.
you've been that person. I mean, that to me, that's your effect with things. You know what I mean? You've always had that. You know, that's why it wasn't no questions asked who's gonna be class president. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, Jamilla's got that mother effect. But that's a beautiful thing. I mean, I do think that's part of it too. I don't know what it is. Somehow, you know, the offense even in the teachers, that's why it's getting to the, you know, it's like, man, you know, the daycare is the school now, you know what I mean? And parents have to realize that trust me, listen, I've been one that, hey, I'm ready to go if the teacher ain't right.
Right.
I want to really check to see the love, because I think when we were coming up, we had people, you know, the Dieter Deans and the so on and so forth that showed love. I mean,
absolutely.
You know, now they're administrators and so on and so forth.
Right.
Teacher was really a mentor back then.
Yes, they were.
It wasn't like just a job. You wasn't just clocking in.
Absolutely.
And it's a tough situation. I get it, and I do think that, you know, that me thing that I always say.
Right.
My kid, my situation, instead of kind of looking at everything as a whole, like, hey man, I'll help this kid too. Right. You know, if my child I'll make sure I bring an extra sack lunch. My grandmother used to do
That's
stuff
right.
like that.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
That village thing really needs to come back.
It does.
To this generation.
Yes.
I would like you to talk a little bit about your book. I want to really make sure we push that a little bit, because you know that's you know I'm really proud of you about that.
Thank you.
I think that will really I think in talking about that a little bit, that will really give some people a way to kind of look at your book and really kind of learn some of the new principles and things that you have in the book to educate the kids in the family dynamic.
Okay, absolutely. Well, the title of my book is It's Harvest Time. Turning It Around, It's Harvest Time.
So where can they get it?
Amazon.
Amazon.
It's available on Amazon.
Okay.
Yes, it's paperback, and you can get an ebook.
Okay.
So it's available both. Coming soon, it'll be an Audible.
Okay.
So we're working on that right now.
That's
Yeah. So the book is actually a compilation of my experiences in working with several different families and family dynamics. It was a great lesson for me, some of the things that I got to experience in my growth as an educator. Because as an educator, you're not always just teaching, but you're always learning too. Absolutely. You're always a humble student of the information you're experiencing and or giving out. One of the things that I continually saw in my walk list was the power of accountability, balance with empowerment.
Absolutely.
I know it helped my parenting skills because we all go through life. Hey, none of us are exempt. Life happens to us all.
Right.
Life changes happen to us all. Sometimes some of us are single. Sometimes some of us are married. Sometimes we're divorced. Sometimes we experience the loss of a parent, right? But there are still some key core values that every family has the power to implement and keep in place for your legacy to grow. Absolutely. No matter what the circumstances are, your legacy should grow.
Absolutely.
Because we're all valuable, right?
Absolutely.
We don't just rip trees out of the ground, right? So we all want our tree to grow.
Yeah.
And so when we come and when we go, that just shouldn't be the end of who we are. We should leave a legacy where our children are carrying on and their children are carrying on. And I think as society, well, I'm not gonna say I think, as a witness, there's been a devaluing of our roles in the family. And it's a trick of the enemy. I'm gonna call it what it is.
Absolutely.
It's the trick of the enemy. it's what Satan wants to convince us to believe.
Absolutely.
But anything that I do as a woman to put my hand to the plow for my children, for my husband, for my extended family, is valuable.
Oh,
and it is nothing less.
Absolutely.
Less. Right? Anything that a father does, and that same thing, it is valuable. I tell people all the time, I thank God for both of my parents. And I used to work a lot with my parents that were co-parenting, as they call it, having challenges with that. And I said, I need you to get over it quick. Because the only person suffering is my kid. Because your kid is my kid. I need you to get over it quick. And we need to all get on the same page. We'd have 3 schedules. One at their house, one at mama's house, one at daddy's house, and one at the school. So the kid was following the same rules at every house, right? Significant behavior change.
Wow.
And you see the levels of love come in, right?
Wow.
But in my book, my family went through that same process. Life happens to everybody, man. But that's what my book takes it back to, because even through those struggles and whatnot, it helped me to embrace my own femininity and what God would have me to be. And I know He wants me to make sure that other women know there's power in their femininity, especially when it's used under God's power and control.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
Absolutely.
My children that God has blessed me to have, I will say I'm always a byproduct. I'm just a byproduct of what God would have had me do with them. But I'm thankful for the fruit that they are bearing. But I was able to make some changes a long time ago that brought that forward. So that's what harvest time gets into.
Wow.
Harvesting and planting those seeds early. Being willing to keep an open mind to what's in God's plan, not my own. Using some of those same strategies, techniques, even when my parents didn't know it with them in the school building, how it brought different dynamics about with families of restoration.
Wow.
To bring that harvest for when they get older and that legacy keeps going. If it's all right with you, the one thing I want to tap into is in my book on page 11.
Oh, yes.
Page 11 is a book that played out right before my eyes. And I got to see the impact of it. Again, as I started learning more of who I was as a woman. It was not less of me to cook for them on a regular basis, right? My auntie always said, the food that comes from me, when my kids and my husband taste, is a little bit warmer and a little bit sweeter. It's true. And they love it. They love it. When my children were growing and they were coming up, I would spend that time with them, reading stories to them. It's that family time. It's that bonding. It's that connecting. Being mindful not to be so quick to scold, right? A woman's words have power. In the word tells us a foolish woman plucks her house down, but a wise woman builds it up. That's not old-fashioned, man. That's the word. That's the word.
It is what it is.
It's the word. And I was able to see the power in that. So going back to page 11, page 11 talks about affirmations. And it talks about when children get a low level of affirmations in the span of a week, you see how it does not grow their self-esteem in a healthy way.
Wow.
Now, when you hit that middle level, that middle ground, right? They get about 1,100 or so, maybe 1,500 affirmations in a week. Plays out where those children, most of the time, more than not, are usually pretty successful in life. You know, some will do okay, some will not. Sometimes that imposter syndrome is related to that middle level there, because I think I can do it, but I'm nervous.
Right.
You kind of toggle back and forth, right? But children that get over 2,200 affirmations in a week,
Wow.
their confidence is different. And you see what they roll out in the society.
Hard to break a winning spirit.
That's exactly right. The way they take on the challenge of being an entrepreneur. The roles that they, okay, I passed, I didn't pass that test. All right, that's okay, I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna pass it. And they keep going, and they keep going. And so in the book, I also do a little bit of storytelling about my daughter. I'm not gonna go into the whole story. You gotta get the book. You gotta get the book to get the whole story, right? Harvest time. That's right. That part right there. But I will say this. One thing that happened with my daughter that was very key, and it was a turning point for me, Les, in my struggle. We all go through the struggle, and we cannot play like we don't. But even in a time that I was very frustrated in life, as I was reading different pieces of information, and as I was working with kiddos, Katrina had just happened. And we had an influx of kiddos that came to our school. Man, they were struggling with their scores. And we went from 67% in our writing subject area. Within a year and a half time, we went to 100%. But we implemented these principles in the way we spoke to our kids, in the way that we responded to them, being mindful of our facial expressions, and being careful to not be quick to scold. Analyze before you respond. So a good example of that is my daughter was selling jewelry at school. One day, I had bought her this little bohemian jewelry kit. She was very creative. Always was doing arts and crafts. She had created all these little sets and had put them in sandwich bags and had put a price on them.
Really? Okay.
She had them in her desk, and the teacher came over to my classroom and she said, this is when I was a teacher, she said, your baby is selling jewelry in the classroom. I said, she's doing what? She said, she's selling jewelry. That's that entrepreneurial spirit. So I said, okay. I said, let me come over there and see what's going on. Went in there. I said, baby, raise your desk. She raises it up. Les, she's got it all laid out. I mean, perfectly like a jewelry store.
Right.
I said, well, look here. So, to not break her spirit and embarrass her in front of her peers. You know, we maybe sometimes would say, why are you doing that? You know better. You should. Not the place. Not the time. Not the words. So I said to her, I said, baby, we're in school. We're in school.
Right.
I think that's wonderful. You're so creative. That's the empowering part.
I get it.
But the accountability part is time and place for everything.
Exactly.
Bible.
Right.
We're going to close this.
Right.
And my expectation for you, unquestionably, is to focus on your schoolwork.
Exactly.
No ifs, no ands, no buts.
Perfect.
All right, mommy. Yes, ma'am. Right? But we get to the end of school. She's in the car line, and the teacher comes over again. And she says, she's selling jewelry again. She's doing it again. Because teachers can become agitated with kids not doing what they tell them to do. And I get it.
Right.
So I didn't ignore the teacher, but I also had to analyze what was going on with my child. So when I went over there, again, she had it all laid out. Just like she's a jewelry woman. And I said, baby, I thought I told you that we cannot sell jewelry at school. She said, yes, Mommy, you did. She said, but we're no longer in school. I said, you're right. We are not, but we are still on school grounds. So that was an opportunity for me to educate her about property, school grounds, etc., but not out of the vicinity. Pack it up, put it away. You can't do any of that while you're here on school grounds. But I didn't break her spirit as far as being creative, selling. I told her, you can do that when you're not here. When we go to the birthday party, if you want to do that with your friends, fine. If we want to go house to house with your friends, we can do that. That's fine. To this day, she's working on being an entrepreneur.
Wow. See? That's a beautiful story, especially from the standpoint of you taking your time in each and every situation,
Yes.
you allow them the opportunity to grow. You
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
I totally get that. I
Right.
mean, that patience is probably what is needed and probably what is missing in a lot of the way we parent today. And sometimes it's difficult, even for us old schoolers, I would
Yes.
say, to do as I say, not as I do type
Right.
of mentality.
Right.
So no, I really get that. That's wonderful. I really want everybody to go check out Harvest Time. It's on Amazon. Jamilla Thomas is the guest, and I really respect and appreciate you coming, man.
Same here. I appreciate you.
Tell us about your situation. You still in that voting situation? Are they still doing the little?
Oh, I am not. I do want to thank everyone.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Once again,
Yeah.
yes, thank you for mentioning that.
Yes.
Yes, I was competing with Entrepreneur Impact.
Yes.
And so that is with Shark Tank. One of the gentlemen from Shark Tank, he was sponsoring that. So I want to thank everyone again for voting. Hopefully next year we'll have another level, right? I made it to the final round because it's with Teach Productions. That's my consulting agency, Teach Productions, which means taking every adult and child higher. And that's the goal. And so moving forward as we work with schools, churches, individual families, it's all about taking each other higher.
Do you have any websites or anything that anybody can get in contact with you if they got any questions?
Yes, my email address is teachproductions@gmail.com. And then you can, of course, go to the website by going on Facebook. Contact us at Facebook, Teach Productions, or Instagram. So, yes. All right.
Well, I thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you so much, Les. It was good to be here today. Thank
So
you.
check this out. Look, thank you for watching. Always like, subscribe, and share. And until next time, welcome to Say Less, where the truth is a safe space and no topic is off limits. We'll catch y'all later, man. Take care.